The wind howled through the mountain pass like a wounded animal, carrying with it the promise of death. Sarah Whitmore pressed herself against the bare rock face, her thin cotton dress offering no protection against the bitter cold that seeped into her bones. Her lips had turned blue an hour ago, and she could no longer feel her fingers or toes. "Please," she whispered into the gathering darkness, though she knew no one would hear. "Please, someone." But there was no one. Her father had made sure of that. She closed her eyes, remembering the look on his face as he'd left her here 3 hours ago. Cold, calculating. The same expression he'd worn when he'd gambled away her mother's jewelry, when he'd sold their farm, when he'd decided his 20-year-old daughter was worth more dead than alive. "The insurance money will set me up proper in San Francisco," he'd said, his breath reeking of whiskey. "You're no use to me anyway. Can't even catch a husband with that plain face of yours." Sarah's throat tightened with unshed tears, but she refused to let them fall. They would only freeze on her cheeks. She had cried enough over the years, watching her father descend into gambling and drink after her mother's death. This was simply the final betrayal in a long line of disappointments. The sun was setting now, painting the snow-covered peaks in shades of pink and gold that would have been beautiful if they didn't signal her approaching death. She had perhaps an hour before full darkness fell, and with it, temperatures that would kill her before dawn. She thought about praying, but the words wouldn't come. What God would listen to a girl abandoned by her own father on a frozen mountain? The sound of hoofbeats made her head snap up. At first, she thought she was hallucinating. The cold did that, she'd heard. Made you see things that weren't there in those final moments. But the sound grew louder, accompanied by a deep voice speaking softly to a horse. "Easy now, Thunder. I know you smell something. Let's see what it is." Sarah tried to call out, but her voice emerged as barely a croak. She pushed away from the rock, stumbling forward on numb legs. Her knees buckled, and she fell face first into the snow. The hoofbeats stopped abruptly. Lord Almighty! Heavy boots crunched through the snow, moving fast. Strong hands gripped her shoulders, turning her over with surprising gentleness. Sarah found herself staring up at the most striking man she'd ever seen. He was massive, easily 6.5 feet tall, with shoulders that blocked out the dying sun. Dark hair fell past his collar, and several days' worth of beard shadowed a jaw that looked carved from granite. But it was his eyes that caught her attention, grey as storm clouds, and filled with an intensity that should have frightened her. Instead, she felt safe, for the first time in years. "Can you hear me?" His voice was deep, rough from disuse, but there was kindness in it. "Miss, can you hear me?" Sarah managed a small nod. "Good, that's good." He was already shrugging out of his heavy coat, wrapping it around her shivering body. "What in God's name are you doing up here? Where's your coat? Your horse?" She tried to answer, but her teeth were chattering too hard to form words. His eyes narrowed as he studied her, taking in her inadequate dress, her lack of supplies, the absence of any belongings whatsoever. His jaw clenched, and something dangerous flickered across his face. "Someone left you here," he said, and it wasn't a question. Sarah's eyes filled with tears, and she hated herself for it. But the understanding in his voice, the anger on her behalf, broke something loose inside her chest. My father," she managed to whisper. The man's expression went very still, very cold. When he spoke again, his voice was quiet but harder than the mountain rock. "No real father would ever do that." He stood in one fluid motion, cradling her against his chest, as if she weighed nothing at all. Sarah should have protested, should have been frightened of this strange mountain man. But his coat smelled like pine and smoke and safety, and his arms around her felt like the first protection she'd ever known. "I've got you now," he murmured, carrying her toward his horse. "I've got you, and I promise you this. You're never going to be cold again. You hear me? Never again." Sarah believed him. The ride to his cabin was a blur of fading consciousness and blessed warmth. She was vaguely aware of being held against a broad chest, of a steady heartbeat beneath her ear, of a deep voice speaking softly to both her and his horse. "Not much farther now. Stay with me, little one. That's it. You're doing fine. So brave. Thunder, easy boy. We need to get her warm." When they finally stopped, Sarah felt herself being lifted again. A door opened, and then she was inside, being lowered onto something soft. A bed, she realized dimly. She hadn't slept in a real bed in weeks, not since her father had gambled away their last boarding house room. "I need to get you out of these wet clothes." the man said, and Sarah's eyes flew open in alarm. He held up his hands immediately. Easy. I know how that sounds, but you'll die if I don't. Hypothermia. Your clothes are frozen. I'm going to be a gentleman about this, I swear it. I'm just going to get you into something dry and warm, then I'm going to make you some hot broth. That's all. I promise. Sarah studied his face. She'd spent 20 years learning to read men, learning when to hide and when to run. This man, this stranger, had murder in his eyes when she'd told him about her father. But when he looked at her, there was only concern. She gave a small nod. He moved with surprising efficiency, turning away to give her privacy as much as possible while helping her out of her frozen dress and into what appeared to be a man's flannel shirt that hung to her knees. His hands were careful, impersonal, though she noticed they trembled slightly as he worked. "What's your name?" he asked, keeping his eyes averted as he wrapped her in thick blankets. Sarah Whitmore. "I'm Marcus Stone." He finally met her eyes again, and the corner of his mouth lifted in what might have been a smile under different circumstances. "Welcome to my home, Miss Whitmore. Not the way I'd prefer to meet a lady, but I'm glad I found you when I did." How did you find me?" "Was checking my trap lines. Thunder, my horse. He started acting strange. Kept wanting to go up that pass. I've learned to trust his instincts." Marcus stood, moving to the fireplace where a large kettle hung. "He saved your life tonight. I'll make sure he gets extra oats for it." Sarah watched him work, this enormous man moving around his small cabin with practiced ease. The space was simple but clean. A single room with a bed, a table, a fireplace, and various supplies neatly organized on shelves. Furs hung on the walls, and the air smelled of wood smoke and leather. "You live here alone?" she asked, her voice still weak. "For 3 years now." He ladled broth into a tin cup, testing the temperature before bringing it to her. "Here. Slow sips. Your stomach needs to adjust." "Why?" The question slipped out before she could stop it. "Why do you live alone up here?" Marcus was quiet for a long moment, his eyes distant. "Same reason most men come to the mountains, I suppose. Running from something, looking for something, maybe both." He met her gaze. "But we're not talking about me right now. We're talking about your father leaving you to die on a frozen mountain." Sarah's hands shook, and some of the broth spilled. Marcus immediately took the cup from her, setting it aside and kneeling beside the bed so they were at eye level. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "That was too direct. But Sarah, what he did, that wasn't your fault. You know that, right?" "He said I was worthless," Sarah heard herself say, "that I was too plain to marry, too useless to keep. He took out an insurance policy on me 6 months ago. Said the money from my death would set him up in California." Marcus's hands clenched into fists, and for a moment Sarah saw the full force of the rage he was holding back. When he spoke, his voice was carefully controlled. "Your father is a coward and a monster, but he's also wrong about you. You don't know me. I know you survived on that mountain for God knows how long. I know you had the strength to keep fighting when most people would have given up. I know you're brave enough to tell a stranger the truth about what happened." His grey eyes held hers. "And I know that you're not plain. You're the most beautiful thing I've seen in 3 years." Sarah's breath caught. No one had ever called her beautiful. Her father had made sure she knew she was lacking, that her brown hair was too mousy, her figure too thin, her face too ordinary. "You don't have to say things like that," she whispered. "I don't say things I don't mean." Marcus reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and gently brushed a strand of hair from her face. His touch was feather-light, reverent. "The question is, what do we do now?" You can't go back to your father. I won't allow it. And I can't take you to town until the weather clears. That storm that's coming." He gestured toward the window, where snow was already beginning to fall harder. "We're looking at 3, maybe 4 days before it's safe to travel." Sarah's heart sank. "I have nowhere to go anyway. No family except my father, no money, no skills that anyone would pay for." "Then you'll stay here." She stared at him. "I can't do that. I can't impose." "You're not imposing. I'm offering." Marcus stood, moving back to the fireplace. "I've got plenty of supplies. The cabin's small, but it's warm. You can have the bed. I'll sleep by the fire." "For how long?" He was quiet, stirring the pot of broth. When he finally turned back to her, there was something unreadable in his expression. "As long as you need. Days. Weeks, months, forever, if that's what it takes for you to figure out what you want to do next. You don't even know me." "I know enough." He brought the broth back to her, helping her hold the cup with his large hands supporting hers. "I know you need help, and I can provide it. I know you're scared. and I won't hurt you. I know you've been treated like you're worthless, and I'm going to show you that's a lie." Sarah felt tears sliding down her cheeks. "Why would you do this? Why would you help me?" Marcus was quiet for a long moment, his thumb absently rubbing circles on the back of her hand where he held the cup. "Because 3 years ago, I was in a dark place, darker than you can imagine, and someone helped me when they didn't have to. They saved my life, even though I didn't think I deserved saving." His eyes met hers, and Sarah saw old pain there, carefully hidden but not quite gone. "Maybe this is my chance to pass that forward. Maybe this is God putting you in my path for a reason. What happened 3 years ago? That's a story for another day. Right now, you need to rest. Finish your broth and then sleep. Tomorrow we can figure out the rest." Sarah wanted to argue, wanted to demand answers, but exhaustion was pulling at her like a heavy blanket. The warmth of the cabin, the safety of Marcus's presence, the sheer relief of being alive, all combined to make her eyes impossibly heavy. "Thank you," she whispered, as Marcus took the empty cup from her hands. "Nothing to thank me for." He pulled the blankets up around her shoulders. "Sleep now. I'll be right here if you need anything." Sarah's eyes drifted closed, and for the first time in longer than she could remember, she felt safe. She woke several times during the night, disoriented and frightened, but each time she found Marcus sitting by the fire, whittling something with a small knife. Each time he would look over, offer a small nod, and return to his work. His presence was steady, reassuring, and Sarah found herself drifting back to sleep more easily each time. When morning light finally filtered through the cabin's small window, Sarah woke to the smell of coffee and bacon. She sat up slowly, her body aching but no longer frozen. The shirt Marcus had given her was warm and soft, and she realized someone, him, must have added more blankets during the night. "Morning," Marcus said without turning around. He was cooking at the fireplace, his back to her. "How are you feeling?" "Sore, but alive." Sarah pushed the blankets back, then froze. I don't have any proper clothes. I set out some things on the chair. They're mine, so they'll be too big. But they're clean and warm. There's a curtain you can pull across that corner for privacy." Sarah looked where he indicated and saw a simple rope strung across one corner of the cabin with a blanket hanging from it. On a nearby chair sat a pile of clothes, trousers, another flannel shirt, thick socks, and what appeared to be a leather belt. "Thank you," she said softly. Marcus finally turned, and Sarah caught her breath. In the morning light, she could see him more clearly. He was even more striking than she'd realized, with high cheekbones and a straight nose that had been broken at least once. But it was the gentleness in his eyes that made her chest tighten, the way he looked at her like she was something precious, rather than the burden her father had always claimed. "Take your time. Breakfast will be ready when you are." Sarah made her way behind the curtain on shaky legs, her muscles protesting every movement. As she dressed in Marcus's oversized clothes, rolling up the sleeves and cinching the belt tight to keep the trousers from falling down, she tried to process everything that had happened. 24 hours ago, she had been dying on a frozen mountain, abandoned by the one person who should have protected her. Now she was in a warm cabin, wearing a stranger's clothes, being offered safety and kindness without any demands or expectations. It didn't make sense. Men didn't do things for free. Her father had taught her that lesson well. There was always a price, always an expectation. But when she emerged from behind the curtain and saw Marcus dishing up 2 plates of bacon and eggs, the way he smiled at her, tentative and warm, made her wonder if maybe, just maybe, he was different. "You look like a prospector," he said with a hint of amusement. "But you're warm, and that's what matters." Sarah found herself smiling back, a real smile that felt foreign on her face. "I probably look ridiculous. You look alive. That's all that matters to me." He gestured to the table. "Come eat. You need your strength." They ate in comfortable silence, Sarah too hungry to worry about table manners, and Marcus seemingly content to just watch her eat. The food was simple but good, and Sarah found herself relaxing slightly in his presence. "Can I ask you something?" Marcus said, after they'd both finished. Sarah nodded, her stomach tightening with anxiety. "Your father, how long had he been planning this?" Sarah set down her fork, her hands trembling slightly. "I'm not sure. He started drinking more heavily about 6 months ago, after he lost our farm in a poker game. We'd been traveling from town to town, staying in boarding houses when he had money, sleeping rough when he didn't. Then 3 weeks ago, he told me he'd gotten us passage to California, said we were going to start fresh. But instead, He brought you here. We were supposed to be taking a shortcut through the mountains. There was a storm coming, and I told him we should wait, but he insisted. Then yesterday morning he woke me early. Said we needed to keep moving. We walked for hours, and then Sarah's voice broke. Then he just stopped, told me to wait there while he scouted ahead, and he never came back. Marcus's jaw was clenched so tight, Sarah could see the muscle jumping. He left you without supplies, without a coat, without any way to survive. He wanted it to look like an accident, like I got lost in the storm and froze to death. Sarah laughed, a bitter sound. The insurance company would pay out, and he'd be free to start over in California without the burden of a useless daughter. "Stop," Marcus said sharply, making Sarah flinch. His expression immediately softened. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to scare you, but I need you to stop calling yourself useless. Your father is a liar and a murderer. Nothing he ever told you was true. How can you know that? You don't know me." Marcus stood, moving to crouch beside her chair so they were at eye level. "I know that any man who would abandon his daughter on a frozen mountain is incapable of seeing worth in anything but money. I know that you survived something that should have killed you. I know that you're sitting here, eating breakfast and talking to me when you should be dead. That takes strength, Sarah. That takes worth." Sarah felt tears prickling at her eyes again. "Why do you care? I'm nothing to you. Just a stranger you found in the snow. You're not nothing." His voice was rough, intense. "You could never be nothing, and maybe I care because I know what it's like to feel worthless. I know what it's like to think the world would be better off without you, and I know how wrong that feeling is. Is that what happened 3 years ago? Is that why you came to the mountains?" Marcus was quiet for a long moment, his eyes distant. Finally he stood, moving back to the fireplace. "I was a soldier," he said quietly, "fought in the war. Saw things that no man should see, did things that I can't take back. When I came home, I brought all that darkness with me. My wife," he paused, his shoulders tense. "My wife tried to help, tried to understand, but I pushed her away. Drank too much, had nightmares, couldn't hold down work. One night I went too far, said things I didn't mean. Scared her." Sarah's heart ached for him. "What happened?" "She left, took our son and went back to her family in Boston, filed for divorce. Said she couldn't live with the man I'd become, and she was right. I was a monster." He turned back to face her, and Sarah saw the pain etched in every line of his face. "I came up here planning to die, built this cabin, stocked it with supplies, and figured I'd just fade away. Let the mountain take me like it takes everything else. But you didn't die." "No. Because one day, about 6 months after I got here, I found a traveler caught in a rock slide. Young preacher, heading to a new congregation out west. He was pinned under his horse, leg broken, bleeding badly. I pulled him out, brought him here, nursed him back to health. Took 2 months before he was strong enough to travel." Marcus smiled, a sad, distant expression. He talked the whole time about forgiveness, about second chances, about how God doesn't make mistakes, and if I was still alive, it was because I had a purpose. I didn't believe him at first, but slowly, as I took care of him, as I worked to save his life, I started to feel something I hadn't felt in years. Purpose, worth, the sense that maybe, just maybe, I could be more than the darkness I'd carried home from the war. Did he make it? The preacher? He did. Went on to his congregation, sent me a letter a few months later. Said he'd found his calling, built a church, gotten married. Said he prayed for me every day, thanked God for putting me in his path. Marcus looked at Sarah. "That's when I realized that maybe my purpose wasn't to die on this mountain. Maybe it was to be here, to help people who needed it. Maybe that's how I atone for the things I did. The man I was." Sarah stood on shaky legs, moving toward him. "You saved my life last night, and maybe that's why you were put in my path." His voice was gentle. "Maybe we both needed saving." They stood there barely 3 feet apart, and Sarah felt something shift in her chest. This man, this stranger, understood her in a way no one ever had. He saw the darkness she carried and didn't turn away. He offered her safety without demands, kindness without expectations. "The storm," she said softly. "You said it would last 3 or 4 days. At least, maybe longer. And after that?" Marcus was quiet, his gray eyes searching her face. "After that, you decide what you want to do. I can take you to the nearest town, help you find work, a place to stay, or," he trailed off, or you can stay here with me for as long as you want." Sarah's breath caught. As what? "As whatever you want to be. A guest, a friend. someone I help get back on her feet. I'm not asking for anything from you, Sarah. I'm just offering you a choice, a chance to figure out who you want to be, away from your father, away from anyone who ever made you feel less than you are. I don't understand why you'd do that." Marcus smiled, a real smile that transformed his rugged face. "Because for the first time in 3 years, I don't feel alone. Because you make me remember that there's good in the world. Because when I look at you, I don't see the darkness anymore. I see possibility." Sarah felt her heart racing. This was insane. She barely knew this man, but standing here in his cabin, wearing his clothes, warmed by his fire and his kindness, she felt something she'd never felt before. Hope. "I'd like to stay," she whispered, "at least for a while, if you're sure." "I'm sure." Marcus reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and gently took her hand. His palm was calloused and rough, but his touch was incredibly gentle. "Welcome home, Sarah Whitmore." The storm raged for 5 days. 5 days of wind and snow that buried the cabin halfway up the walls. 5 days of being trapped inside with Marcus Stone, learning the rhythm of his life, the quiet comfort of his presence. Sarah quickly discovered that Marcus was a man of routine. He woke before dawn, built up the fire, made coffee. He checked his supplies, did small repairs around the cabin, carved intricate figures from wood while sitting by the hearth. He was quiet, speaking only when he had something worth saying, but his silence was comfortable rather than oppressive, and he was unfailingly kind. On the second day, when Sarah woke screaming from a nightmare about the mountain, Marcus was there immediately, speaking softly, reminding her she was safe. He didn't touch her without permission, but he sat on the floor beside the bed until she fell back asleep, his presence a steady anchor in the darkness. On the third day, he taught her how to carve, sat beside her at the table, his large hands guiding hers, showing her how to follow the grain of the wood, how to let the knife do the work. Their shoulders touched, and Sarah felt warmth spreading through her that had nothing to do with the fire. "You're a natural," Marcus said softly, watching her work on a small bird. "Look at that. Beautiful. It's lopsided. It's perfect." He met her eyes, and Sarah saw something in his gaze that made her breath catch. "Everything you do is perfect." On the 4th day, Sarah insisted on helping with chores. Marcus protested, but she was firm, and eventually he relented. They fell into an easy partnership, Sarah cooking, while Marcus handled the heavier work. She found herself humming as she worked, something she hadn't done in years. "You're happy," Marcus observed that evening, watching her stir a pot of stew. "I am," Sarah admitted, surprised by the truth of it. "Is that strange? That I'm happy here, trapped in a cabin during a blizzard? Not strange at all." Marcus moved closer, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his large frame. "I'm happy too, happier than I've been in a long time." Sarah turned to look at him and found him staring at her with an intensity that made her knees weak. They were so close, barely a hand's width between them. She could see the flecks of darker grey in his eyes, the way his pulse jumped in his throat. "Marcus," she whispered, not sure what she was asking for. "I know," he said softly. "I feel it too." "Feel what?" "This. Us. Whatever this is that's happening." He reached up slowly, cupping her face with one large hand. His palm was warm against her cheek, his touch infinitely gentle. "I haven't felt anything like this since before the war. Since before I became the man I thought I'd always be." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that you scare me, Sarah Whitmore. You scare me because you make me want things I thought I'd given up on. You make me feel like maybe I could be the man I was supposed to be before the war took that from me." Sarah leaned into his touch, her heart racing. "You scare me too, because I don't know how to trust this. I don't know how to believe that someone could want me, could care about me, without there being a price." "There's no price." Marcus's thumb stroked her cheekbone. "There's never a price with me. All I want is to see you smile, to watch you realize how extraordinary you are, to be the man who gets to witness you becoming who you're meant to be. And if I want more than that..." Marcus's breath caught. "Sarah, I know it's fast. I know it doesn't make sense. But Marcus, when I'm with you, I feel like I can breathe for the first time in my life. When you look at me, I don't feel plain or worthless or broken. I feel seen. You are seen." His voice was rough with emotion. "God, Sarah, you're all I see." He was leaning closer now, his eyes searching hers for permission. Sarah's heart was pounding so hard she thought it might burst. But she didn't pull away. Instead, she rose on her toes, closing the final distance between them. Their lips met softly, tentatively, a question and an answer all at once. Marcus made a sound low in his throat, his other hand coming up to cradle her face as he deepened the kiss. He tasted like coffee and promises, and Sarah felt something inside her break open, all the walls she'd built around her heart crumbling under the gentleness of his touch. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Marcus rested his forehead against hers. "I didn't plan this," he said softly. "I didn't plan to feel this way about you. Neither did I. But I'm not sorry." He pulled back enough to look into her eyes. "Are you?" Sarah smiled. A real, genuine smile that felt like sunlight breaking through clouds. Not even a little bit. They stood there for a long moment, wrapped in each other's arms, while outside the storm raged on. But inside the cabin there was only warmth and possibility, and the fragile beginnings of something that felt like love. On the 5th day, the storm finally broke. Sarah woke to silence, the howling wind replaced by an eerie quiet. She sat up, disoriented, and found Marcus already awake, standing by the window. "It's over," he said without turning around. "The storm, it passed during the night." Sarah climbed out of bed, moving to stand beside him. Outside, the world was transformed. Snow covered everything in a blanket of white, glittering in the early morning sun like diamonds. It was beautiful and terrifying all at once. "You can leave now," Marcus said quietly. "In a few days, once I dig out and make sure the paths are clear, I can take you to town, help you start fresh." Sarah's heart clenched. "Is that what you want?" "What I want." Marcus finally looked at her, and the raw emotion in his eyes took her breath away. "What I want is for you to stay. What I want is to wake up every morning and see you in my cabin. What I want is to spend the rest of my life making sure you never feel worthless or unloved again. But that's selfish of me. You deserve more than a broken mountain man living in isolation." "You're not broken, Sarah. You're not," she insisted, taking his hands in hers. "You're healing, you're growing. You're the kindest, most honorable man I've ever met. And if you think I deserve more than you, then you're wrong." Marcus shook his head. "You deserve the world. You deserve a proper home, a community, a life that's more than this cabin and these mountains." "What if this is the life I want?" Sarah moved closer, looking up into his storm-gray eyes. "What if you're the life I want?" "You don't know what you're saying. You're grateful, that's natural, but—" "Don't," Sarah said sharply. "Don't dismiss what I'm feeling. I'm not a child, Marcus. I'm a grown woman who knows her own mind. And I'm telling you that these 5 days with you have been the happiest of my life. I'm telling you that when I think about leaving, about going to some town where I don't know anyone, where I'll be alone again, I can't breathe. I'm telling you that I want to stay here with you." "Sarah," Marcus's voice was rough with emotion. "If you stay, if we do this, I need you to understand something. I'm not an easy man. I have nightmares. I have bad days where the darkness comes back. I'm learning to be better, to heal, but it's a process. And this life, this cabin, it's isolated, lonely sometimes, harsh. Are you sure that's what you want?" Sarah reached up, cupping his bearded face in her hands. "I've been lonely my whole life, Marcus. I've been cold and scared and made to feel worthless by the one person who should have protected me. But these 5 days with you, I haven't been lonely once. I haven't felt worthless. I felt seen and valued and cared for. So yes, I'm sure. I've never been more sure of anything." Marcus closed his eyes, leaning into her touch. When he opened them again, there were tears on his cheeks. "I love you," he said simply. "I know it's too soon. I know it's insane. But Sarah, I love you. I think I loved you from the moment I found you on that mountain, so small and brave and fighting to survive. I loved you when you looked at me without fear, when you trusted me to keep you safe. I love you now, standing here in my oversized clothes, telling me you want to stay. And I'll love you every day for the rest of my life, if you'll let me." Sarah felt tears streaming down her own face. "I love you too. I don't know how or why, but I do. I love your gentleness and your strength. I love how safe you make me feel. I love the man you are and the man you're becoming, and I want to be part of that journey. I want to be here with you, building a life together." Marcus pulled her into his arms, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe. But Sarah didn't mind. She wrapped her arms around his waist, pressing her face against his chest, listening to the steady thunder of his heartbeat. "Marry me," Marcus said into her hair. Sarah pulled back, staring at him. "What? Marry me?" he repeated, his grey eyes intense. "I know it's fast. I know we barely know each other. But Sarah, I'm 35 years old. I've been to war. I've lost everything. I've lived on this mountain planning to die. And then you came into my life, and suddenly I want to live again. I want to build something real. I want to give you my name, my protection, my future. Marry me, please." "Yes," Sarah said without hesitation. "Yes, I'll marry you." Marcus let out a breath that sounded almost like a sob, pulling her close again. "We'll go to town as soon as the paths are clear. Find a preacher, do it proper. I want everyone to know you're mine, that you're protected, that anyone who tries to hurt you will have to go through me first." "What about your wife? Your ex-wife?" "The divorce was final 2 years ago. I got the papers." Marcus cupped her face, his expression serious. "There's nothing standing between us, Sarah. Nothing but our choice to be together. And I choose you. Every day for the rest of my life, I choose you." Sarah kissed him then, pouring all her love and gratitude and hope into it. Marcus responded with a tenderness that made her heart ache, his large hands gentle on her face, his lips soft against hers. When they finally pulled apart, both breathless, Marcus rested his forehead against hers. "We should go," he said reluctantly. "To town, make this official, and there's something else we need to do." "What?" Marcus's expression darkened. "We need to report your father. What he did, it was attempted murder. He can't be allowed to get away with it." Sarah's stomach clenched with fear. "Marcus, he's dangerous. If we report him, he'll never hurt you again," Marcus said firmly. "I promise you that. We'll go to the sheriff, tell him everything. Your father will be arrested, tried, put away where he can never hurt anyone else. You'll be free, Sarah, truly free. And if he tries to come after us," Marcus's smile was grim, "then he'll learn very quickly that mountain men protect what's theirs. And Sarah, you're mine now. Anyone who threatens you, threatens me. And I promise you, I'm not a man who loses twice." They spent the next 2 days preparing for the journey to town. Marcus dug out paths through the snow, checked his horse, and packed supplies. Sarah helped where she could, though mostly she found herself just watching him work, marveling at the strength in his frame, the way his muscles moved under his shirt, the quiet competence with which he did everything. But their time in the cabin wasn't just about preparation. It was about learning each other, about building the foundation of what they both knew was becoming something permanent. On the morning after their declaration of love, Sarah woke to find Marcus, already up, sitting by the fire with his whittling knife and a piece of wood. She watched him for a moment, admiring the concentration on his face, the gentle way his large hands worked the small piece of wood. "What are you making?" she asked softly. Marcus looked up, his face softening when he saw her. "Come see." Sarah wrapped a blanket around her shoulders and moved to sit beside him. In his hands was a small carved bird, delicate and beautiful, with wings spread as if in flight. "It's for you," he said, placing it in her palm. "A reminder that you're free now, free to fly wherever you want to go, even if I hope you choose to stay here with me." Sarah felt tears pricking her eyes. "It's beautiful, Marcus. Thank you. I started it the first night you were here," he admitted. "Couldn't sleep, kept thinking about you lying there, so small and hurt. Kept thinking about how brave you were. I've been working on it every night since, while you slept. You watched over me every night, every single one." His grey eyes met hers. "Sarah, I need you to understand something. From the moment I found you on that mountain, you became the most important thing in my world. I know that might sound crazy. We barely know each other, but it's the truth. Watching over you, making sure you were safe, it gave me purpose again. You gave me purpose." Sarah set the carved bird carefully on the table and turned to face him fully. "I need to tell you something too. These past days with you, I've felt things I've never felt before. Not just safety or gratitude, but Desire. Is that wrong? To want someone this much, this quickly? Marcus's breath caught, his eyes darkening. It's not wrong. I feel it too. Every time you smile at me, every time you touch my hand, every time you look at me like I'm someone worth looking at, I feel it. But Sarah, I need you to be sure. I need you to know that this isn't just gratitude or relief at being saved. I need you to want me for me, not because I pulled you off that mountain. I want you for you, Sarah said firmly. She reached out, taking his rough hand in hers. I want you because you're kind and gentle despite your size. I want you because you understand pain and you're fighting to heal from it. I want you because when you look at me, I feel seen for the first time in my life. I want you because you make me feel safe and cherished and beautiful. That has nothing to do with the mountain, Marcus. That's all you. Marcus set down his knife with trembling hands. Sarah, if we do this, if we really commit to each other, I need you to know what you're getting. I'm not a rich man. This cabin, it's all I have. I trap and hunt for supplies, trade furs in town a few times a year. It's a simple life, sometimes a hard life. And I still have my demons, the nightmares, the dark days. I'm working on it, but I can't promise I'm all healed. I don't need you to be rich, Sarah said. I don't need fancy things or an easy life. I grew up watching my father chase money and losing his soul in the process. This cabin, this simple life you've built, it's more than I ever had. And as for your demons, Marcus, we all have them. Mine are just different from yours. We can fight them together. Together, Marcus repeated as if testing the word. I like the sound of that. So do I. They sat there for a moment, hands clasped, the fire crackling beside them. Then Marcus spoke again, his voice hesitant. There's something else I need to tell you about my wife, my ex-wife. Sarah's stomach clenched, but she kept her voice steady. Tell me. Her name was Elizabeth. We got married young, before the war. She was beautiful, educated, from a good family in Boston. When I went off to fight, she waited for me, wrote me letters every week, kept our home. She was a good woman, Sarah. The best. What happened when you came back? Marcus was quiet for a long moment, staring into the fire. The man who left wasn't the man who came back. I'd seen things, done things that changed me. I tried to pretend I was fine, tried to be the husband she deserved, but the nightmares were so bad. I'd wake up screaming. Sometimes I'd wake up with my hands around her throat, thinking she was an enemy soldier. Sarah gasped, but Marcus continued, his voice flat with self-loathing. I never hurt her, thank God. I'd always wake up before I did any real damage. But the fear in her eyes, Sarah, the way she started to flinch when I moved too quickly, it killed me. I started drinking to numb it all, lost my job at the mill, started picking fights in town. One night I came home drunk and angry, and I said terrible things to her, told her she didn't understand, that she was weak, that I should have died in the war instead of coming back to this. Marcus. She left the next morning, took our son, Thomas, who was only 3 years old at the time, and went back to her family, filed for divorce on grounds of cruelty and drunkenness. And she was right to do it. I was cruel. I was drunk. I was dangerous. The divorce was final within 6 months. Do you still love her? Marcus looked at Sarah, and the honesty in his eyes made her heart ache. I'll always love who she was, and I'll always love my son, but I'm not in love with her anymore. She's remarried now to a banker in Boston, a good man who treats her well and is a good father to Thomas. She sends me a letter once a year, lets me know how Thomas is doing, sends me a photograph. He's 7 now. Smart as a whip, looks just like me. Do you want to see him? Every day, Marcus said quietly, but I made a choice when I came up here. I decided that the best thing I could do for my son was to stay away, to let him grow up with a good man as his father instead of the broken soldier I was. Maybe someday when he's older, I'll try to explain, try to tell him I loved him enough to let him go. Sarah's heart broke for him, for the pain he carried, for the sacrifice he'd made. You're not that broken soldier anymore, Marcus. You're healing. You're building a new life. I'm trying. He squeezed her hand. And having you here, it makes me believe that maybe I can be someone worth knowing again. Someone who could be a good husband, and maybe someday a good father again. You already are, Sarah said softly. You're already everything I could ever want. They spent the rest of that day talking, sharing stories, building the intimacy that went beyond physical attraction. Marcus told her about his childhood on the farm, about learning to hunt with his grandfather, about the simple joys of working the land. Sarah told him about her mother, about the woman who had tried to shield her from her father's increasingly erratic behavior, who had died of pneumonia when Sarah was 15 and left her alone with a man who saw her as nothing but a burden. "She used to sing to me," Sarah said, her voice distant with memory, "old songs from her childhood in Ireland. Even when things were bad, when my father was drunk or angry, she'd sing. She had the most beautiful voice." "Will you sing for me sometime?" Marcus asked. Sarah blushed. "I'm not very good. Nothing like my mother. I don't care if you're good. I just want to hear you." So Sarah sang, softly and hesitantly at first, an old Irish lullaby her mother had taught her. Her voice was thin and trembling with nerves, but Marcus listened with such rapt attention, such clear appreciation, that she found herself gaining confidence. When she finished, he was smiling. "Beautiful," he said. "You're beautiful." The next day, Marcus took her outside for the first time since the storm. The world was transformed, covered in deep snow that sparkled in the sunlight. He showed her how to walk in snowshoes, laughing gently when she stumbled and fell, catching her each time with those strong, sure hands. "You're doing great," he encouraged as she took another tentative step. "Better than I did my first time. I fell flat on my face within 10 seconds. "I don't believe that for a second," Sarah said, laughing. "You're too coordinated." Coordination and snowshoes don't always go together. Trust me, I've got the scars to prove it. They made their way slowly around the cabin, Marcus pointing out landmarks, showing her where his trap lines ran, where the best hunting grounds were. Sarah found herself fascinated by the way he read the landscape, how he could tell which animals had passed through by their tracks, how he knew where to find water even under all the snow. "How did you learn all this?" she asked. "My grandfather, mostly. He was a trapper, spent most of his life in the wilderness. When I was a boy, I'd spend summers with him learning the trade. My father wanted me to be a farmer like him, but I always loved the wild places more." Marcus smiled, a distant expression on his face. "Grandpa died when I was 15, left me all his gear, his knowledge, told me the wilderness would always be there for me when I needed it. Guess he was right about that." "He'd be proud of you," Sarah said. "Of what you've built here, of how you've survived." "I hope so." Marcus looked down at her, his expression softening. "I hope he'd approve of you, too. A city girl who can't even walk in snowshoes? A brave, beautiful woman who makes me believe in second chances." That night they prepared dinner together in the small cabin, working in comfortable synchronicity. Sarah had never felt so at ease with another person, so natural and unguarded. When Marcus accidentally bumped into her while reaching for the salt, they both froze, suddenly aware of how close they were standing. "Sarah," Marcus said softly, his voice rough. She turned to face him, her heart racing. "Yes? I want to kiss you again. Is that all right?" Instead of answering, Sarah rose on her toes and pressed her lips to his. Marcus made a sound low in his throat, his arms coming around her waist, pulling her close. The kiss was deeper this time, more certain, filled with promise and desire, and the beginning of something neither of them could deny. When they pulled apart, both breathing hard, Marcus rested his forehead against hers. "We should go to town soon," he said. "Make this official. I want you to be my wife, Sarah, in every way that matters." "I'm already yours," Sarah whispered. "But yes, let's go to town. Let's make it official." On the third day they set out. The journey took most of the day, Marcus keeping his horse at a steady pace through the snow-covered mountains. Sarah rode in front of him, cradled between his arms as he held the reins, feeling safer than she'd ever felt in her life. They talked as they rode, sharing stories, learning each other. Marcus told her about his childhood on a farm in Virginia, about his time in the war, about the slow process of healing that had brought him to this mountain. Sarah told him about her mother, about the years of watching her father spiral into gambling and drink, about the loneliness of never feeling good enough. "You were always good enough," Marcus said fiercely, his arms tightening around her. "Your father was the one who wasn't. He didn't deserve you. He never deserved you." They reached the town of Silverton just before sunset. It was a small mining town, rough around the edges but bustling with activity. Marcus led them straight to the sheriff's office, helping Sarah down from the horse with gentle hands. "You ready for this?" he asked softly. Sarah nodded, though her hands were shaking. "Will you come with me?" "Every step of the way." The sheriff, a grizzled man named Henderson, listened to Sarah's story with increasing anger. When she finished, he slammed his hand on his desk. "That son of a—" He caught himself, glancing at Sarah. "Pardon me, miss, but that's attempted murder, plain and simple. You got any idea where your father might be?" "He mentioned San Francisco," Sarah said. "Said that's where he was going with the insurance money." "Well, he won't get far," Henderson said grimly. "I'll wire the authorities in California, put out a warrant for his arrest. Man like that, he'll slip up eventually. They always do." He looked at Marcus. "You found her on the mountain about a week ago. Lucky you were there." Henderson's eyes narrowed. "You Marcus Stone, the hermit up in the high country? That's me. Heard about you. Some folks say you're crazy living up there alone, but I always figured a man's got his reasons." Henderson's expression softened slightly as he looked between Marcus and Sarah. "Looks like maybe you found a good reason to come back down." Marcus's hand found Sarah's, squeezing gently. "The best reason." They left the sheriff's office with promises that Henderson would keep them informed. Then Marcus led Sarah down the street to a small church at the edge of town. "Wait here," he said, helping her onto a bench outside. "I'll be just a minute." Sarah watched him disappear inside, her heart pounding. This was really happening. In a matter of days, she'd gone from dying on a mountain to planning a wedding. It was insane. It was terrifying. It was perfect. Marcus emerged a few minutes later with an older man in preacher's garb. The man was smiling, his weathered face kind. "Miss Whitmore," he said, taking her hand. "I'm Reverend Matthews. Marcus here tells me you two want to get married." "Yes," Sarah said, glancing at Marcus. If that's all right, more than all right. Any woman who can tame Marcus Stone deserves a medal, not just a wedding ring." Matthews chuckled. "Come on inside. Let's make this official." The ceremony was simple but beautiful. Just the three of them in the small church, with the last rays of sunset filtering through the windows. Marcus held both of Sarah's hands as they said their vows, his grey eyes never leaving hers. "I, Marcus Stone, take you, Sarah Whitmore, to be my lawfully wedded wife. I promise to protect you, to honor you, to love you for all the days of my life. I promise to be the man you deserve, to help you heal, to stand beside you through whatever comes. I promise that you'll never be cold or scared or alone again. This I swear before God." Sarah's voice shook as she repeated her own vows. "I, Sarah Whitmore, take you, Marcus Stone, to be my lawfully wedded husband. I promise to love you, to support you, to stand by you through the darkness and the light. I promise to help you heal as you've helped me. I promise to build a life with you, a home with you, a future with you. This I swear before God." Reverend Matthews beamed. "Then by the power vested in me, I pronounce you husband and wife. Marcus, you may kiss your bride." Marcus cupped Sarah's face with both hands, kissing her with a tenderness that made her eyes sting with tears. When they pulled apart, he was smiling, a real, genuine smile that transformed his entire face. "Hello, Mrs. Stone," he whispered. "Hello, husband," Sarah whispered back. They spent their wedding night at the town's only boarding house, in a small but clean room with a real bed and a fireplace. Marcus was nervous, Sarah could tell, his hands trembling slightly as he helped her out of her coat. "Sarah," he said softly, "I want you to know I don't expect anything tonight. You're my wife now, and I'm going to take care of you, but there's no rush. We have the rest of our lives." Sarah turned to face him, reaching up to touch his bearded face. "I'm not afraid, Marcus. Not of you, not of this. I want to do this right. I want you to feel safe, to feel loved. I don't want to rush you or pressure you or—" Sarah kissed him, cutting off his worried rambling. Marcus made a sound low in his throat, his arms coming around her waist, pulling her close. The kiss deepened, growing heated, and Sarah felt warmth spreading through her body that had nothing to do with the fireplace. "I love you," she whispered against his lips. "I trust you. Show me what it means to be your wife." Marcus groaned, sweeping her up in his arms and carrying her to the bed. "Sarah, God, you're perfect. You're everything. I'm going to spend the rest of my life making sure you know that." And he did. All through that night, Marcus showed Sarah what it meant to be truly loved, truly cherished. His touch was reverent, worshipful, as if she was something precious and sacred. He whispered endearments in her ear, told her she was beautiful, perfect, his. And Sarah, who had spent her whole life feeling worthless, finally understood what it meant to be valued. In the morning, Sarah woke, wrapped in Marcus's arms, feeling more content than she'd ever felt in her life. He was already awake, watching her with soft eyes. "Good morning, wife," he murmured, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "Good morning, husband," Sarah replied, snuggling closer to his warmth. They lay there for a while, neither wanting to break the spell of the moment. Eventually, Marcus spoke again. "I need to tell you something," he said quietly, "about why I really came to these mountains." Sarah propped herself up on her elbow, looking at him. "You said you came here to die." "I did, but there's more to it than that." Marcus took a deep breath. "After Elizabeth left, after the divorce, I hit rock bottom. I was drinking every day, couldn't hold down work, got into fights. One night I was so drunk I could barely stand, and I pulled out my service revolver, put it to my head." Sarah gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. "I was going to do it," Marcus continued, his voice flat, "was going to end it all. But my hand was shaking so badly from the drink that I dropped the gun. It went off when it hit the floor, nearly took my foot off. Scared me sober, at least for that night. And in that moment of clarity, I realized something. I realized that if I was going to die, I at least wanted to die somewhere beautiful, somewhere peaceful, not in some filthy boarding house room that smelled like whiskey and failure. So you came here. So I came here, built this cabin, stocked it with supplies. My plan was to live out here until I ran out of food, then just walk out into the wilderness and let the cold take me. Quick, peaceful, no mess for anyone to clean up." He smiled bitterly. "But then I found that preacher, and saving his life, taking care of him. It reminded me of who I used to be before the war. A man who helped people, a man who had purpose, a man who was worth something." "You were always worth something," Sarah said fiercely. "I know that now. The preacher, he talked to me about forgiveness. Not just forgiving others, but forgiving myself. He said that God doesn't make mistakes, that I survived the war for a reason, that my life still had purpose." And slowly, I started to believe him, started to think that maybe I could be more than the worst thing I'd ever done. And then you found me. And then I found you. Marcus pulled her close, burying his face in her hair. And suddenly, for the first time in 3 years, I didn't just want to survive. I wanted to live. I wanted to build something real, something lasting. I wanted to be the man I was before the war took that from me. Sarah held him tightly, understanding the weight of what he was sharing. "Thank you for telling me. You deserve to know. You deserve to know who you married, all of it, the good and the bad." "I know who I married," Sarah said. "I married a good man who's fighting his demons and winning. I married a man who saved my life and gave me a reason to live. I married the man I love." They stayed in town for 3 days, getting supplies and making arrangements. Marcus introduced Sarah to the few people he knew, and Sarah was surprised by how warmly they received her. The shopkeeper's wife, a motherly woman named Agnes, took Sarah under her wing immediately. "Marcus Stone getting married," Agnes said, shaking her head in amazement. "Never thought I'd see the day. That man's been a hermit for 3 years, comes to town maybe twice a year for supplies. Barely says 2 words to anyone, but the way he looks at you, honey, like you hung the moon. That's real love right there." Sarah blushed. "He's a good man." "He is. Troubled, sure, but good. You're good for him. I can already see the difference. He's smiling, talking to people. He's alive again." Agnes patted Sarah's hand. "You take care of each other up there on that mountain, you hear? And if you ever need anything, you come see me. Women need other women sometimes, especially when they're living in isolation with a man." Sarah felt tears prickling her eyes. She'd never had a mother figure in her life, not since her own mother died. "Thank you, Agnes. That means more than you know. Don't mention it. Now let's get you some proper winter clothes. Can't have you freezing up there." Agnes helped Sarah pick out warm dresses, thick stockings, a heavy coat lined with fur. Marcus insisted on buying everything, refusing to let Sarah protest. "You're my wife," he said firmly. "It's my job to provide for you. Let me do this." They also stopped by the doctor's office, where Marcus introduced Sarah to Dr. Hastings, an older man with kind eyes. "Good to meet you, Mrs. Stone," Hastings said, shaking her hand. "Marcus here tells me you have some skill with healing." "A bit," Sarah said modestly. "I used to help my mother tend to sick neighbors when I was young." "Well, if you're living up in the high country, that's a valuable skill. Nearest doctor is me, and I'm a day's ride away in good weather. Let me give you some supplies, basic medicines, bandages, a book on common ailments. You'll be doing your community a service if you can help folks who can't make it to town. Marcus looked at Sarah with pride. She's already tended to me a few times, got a gentle touch. Before they left town, Marcus took Sarah to visit Sheriff Henderson one more time. The sheriff had news. Got a wire back from California, Henderson said. Your father's been spotted in San Francisco, trying to collect on that insurance policy. The company got suspicious when he couldn't produce a body, started asking questions. He's claiming you ran off, that you're probably dead by now, but they're not buying it. They've frozen the payout pending investigation. So he won't get the money? Sarah asked. Not a cent, and we've got warrants out for his arrest. Attempted murder, fraud, abandonment. He'll spend the rest of his life in prison if we catch him. Henderson looked at Marcus. You keep your wife safe up there. Man desperate enough to try to kill his own daughter might be desperate enough to come looking for revenge when he realizes his plan failed. Marcus's expression darkened. If he comes near her, he'll wish he'd died on that mountain instead. I don't doubt it. Just be careful. They returned to the mountain cabin 3 days later, Sarah riding in front of Marcus, her back pressed against his chest, feeling more content than she'd ever felt in her life. The cabin looked different now, no longer just Marcus's refuge, but their home. The first year of their marriage was one of healing and growth. Marcus's nightmares became less frequent, though they never fully went away. On the bad nights, Sarah would hold him, stroking his hair, reminding him that he was safe, that the war was over, that he was home. And slowly, day by day, the darkness lifted. The first time Marcus had a nightmare after they were married, Sarah woke to find him sitting up in bed, drenched in sweat, breathing hard. His eyes were distant, haunted, and she could tell he wasn't really seeing her. Marcus, she said softly, not touching him yet. She'd learned from their conversations that touching him during a nightmare could trigger a defensive response. Marcus, it's Sarah. You're safe. You're home. His eyes gradually focused on her, and she saw the moment recognition dawned. Sarah, God, I'm sorry. Did I wake you? It's all right. She moved closer carefully, placing a gentle hand on his arm. Do you want to talk about it? It's always the same, he said, his voice rough. The battle at Chancellorsville, the smoke so thick you couldn't see your own hand, the screaming, the blood. He closed his eyes. I see the faces of the men I killed. Boys, really. Some of them couldn't have been more than 16. And in my dreams, they ask me why. Why did I kill them? What did they do to deserve it? Sarah's heart ached for him. It was war, Marcus. You were following orders. You were trying to survive. I know that up here. He tapped his head. But in here, he pressed his hand to his chest. I still feel like a murderer. I still see their faces. I still hear them screaming. Come here, Sarah said, opening her arms. Marcus hesitated for only a moment before collapsing against her, his large frame shaking with suppressed sobs. Sarah held him, stroking his hair, murmuring soft reassurances. You're not a murderer. You're a good man who was put in an impossible situation. You're a good man who's fighting to heal. You're a good man who saved my life and gave me a reason to live. That's who you are, Marcus. That's the truth. They sat like that for a long time, until Marcus's breathing evened out and the tension left his body. When he finally pulled back, his eyes were red, but clearer. Thank you, he said quietly. Always, Sarah promised, for better or worse. Remember, I'm here for all of it. Sarah bloomed in the safety of Marcus's love. She learned to hunt and trap alongside him, learned to read the weather and the seasons. She found she had a gift for healing, and soon word spread through the mountains. Travelers would stop by their cabins seeking help for injuries or illnesses, and Sarah would tend to them, while Marcus stood watch, protective and proud. The first patient came in early spring. A trapper named Joe had cut his hand badly while skinning a beaver, and the wound had become infected. He showed up at their cabin feverish and delirious, barely able to stand. Marcus carried him inside and laid him on the bed while Sarah immediately set to work. She cleaned the wound with whiskey, making the man cry out in pain, then applied a poultice of herbs she'd gathered and dried during the winter. Will he be all right? Marcus asked, watching her work with admiration. The infection is bad, but it hasn't spread to the bone yet. If we can keep the fever down and keep the wound clean, he should heal. Sarah looked up at her husband. But he'll need to stay here for a few days. Is that all right? Of course, whatever you need to do. Sarah nursed Joe back to health over the next 5 days. Marcus slept by the fire to give the injured man the bed, and Sarah dozed in a chair beside her patient, waking every few hours to check his fever and change his bandages. When Joe finally woke, clear-eyed and lucid, he grasped Sarah's hand. "You saved my life, Mrs. Stone," he said. "I won't forget that." "Just doing what anyone would do," Sarah said modestly. "Not anyone. You've got a gift." Joe looked at Marcus, who was standing in the doorway. "You're a lucky man, Stone. Real lucky." "Don't I know it?" Marcus said, smiling at his wife. Word spread after that. Trappers, travelers, even families from the few scattered settlements in the area would make the trek to the stone cabin when someone was sick or injured. Sarah treated burns and broken bones, fevers and infections. She delivered 2 babies that first year, her hands steady and sure, even though her heart was pounding with fear. Marcus supported her through all of it, fetching water, holding patients down when necessary, offering his quiet strength. And every night, when the patients were settled, he would pull Sarah into his arms and tell her how proud he was of her. "You're amazing," he would say. "You know that? You're amazing. I'm just doing what I can to help. You're doing more than that. You're giving these people hope. You're giving them a reason to keep going, just like you gave me." As summer arrived, bringing long days and warm nights, Sarah and Marcus fell into a comfortable rhythm. They worked together during the day, Marcus tending to his trap lines and hunting, while Sarah managed the cabin and her growing collection of medicinal herbs. In the evenings, they would sit outside and watch the sunset paint the mountains in shades of gold and purple. Sarah nestled in Marcus's arms. One evening in late June, as they sat watching the stars come out, Marcus spoke quietly. "I got a letter from Elizabeth today. Came with the supply wagon." Sarah tensed slightly. "What did it say?" "Thomas is doing well. He's 7 now, starting school. Smart as a whip, apparently. Loves reading and mathematics." Marcus's voice was wistful. "She sent a photograph. He looks just like I did at that age. Can I see it?" Marcus pulled the photograph from his pocket and handed it to Sarah. In it, a young boy with dark hair and serious grey eyes stood beside a woman in a fine dress. The boy looked so much like Marcus, it made Sarah's heart ache. "He's beautiful," she said softly. "He is." Marcus was quiet for a moment. "Elizabeth says she's told him about me, about how I fought in the war. How I got sick after, how I had to go away to get better. She says he asks about me sometimes, wants to know if I'm still alive. What do you want to do?" "I don't know. Part of me wants to write to him, to try to build some kind of relationship. But another part of me thinks it would be selfish. He's got a good life now. A good father. What right do I have to confuse him?" Sarah thought for a moment, then spoke carefully. "Marcus, you're his father. Not just biologically, but in your heart. That doesn't go away just because you're not there. And if he's asking about you, if he wants to know you, then maybe you owe it to both of you to try. Even if it's just letters at first." Marcus looked at her, his eyes shining with unshed tears. "What if he hates me? What if he's angry that I left? Then you deal with that when it comes. But Marcus, if you don't try, you'll always wonder. You'll always regret it. And regret is a heavy burden to carry." "When did you get so wise?" Sarah smiled. "I had a good teacher." That night, Marcus sat down and wrote his first letter to his son. Sarah watched him struggle with the words, scratch out lines, start over. When he finally finished, his hands were shaking. "Will you read it?" he asked. "Tell me if it's all right." Sarah took the letter and read, "Dear Thomas, your mother tells me you've been asking about me. I'm glad. I think about you every single day. Wonder how you're growing, what you're learning, who you're becoming. I know I haven't been there for you, and I'm sorry for that. I was very sick when I came back from the war. Sick in my mind and my heart, and I made the decision to leave so that you could have a better life than I could give you at the time. But I want you to know that I love you. I have always loved you, from the moment you were born. And even though I'm not there with you, even though another man is raising you and doing a far better job than I could have done when I was sick, you are still my son. You will always be my son. I'm doing better now. I live in the mountains of Colorado with my wife, Sarah. She's a healer, helps people who are sick or hurt. I think you would like her. She's kind and brave and smart, just like your mother. If you want to write to me, I would love to hear from you. But if you don't, I understand. Either way, know that I think of you always, and I'm proud of the the boy you're becoming. Your father, Marcus Stone. Sarah looked up, tears streaming down her face. It's perfect, Marcus. It's honest and kind and full of love. He'll treasure it. You think so? I know so. They mailed the letter the next time they went to town, and then began the anxious wait for a response. 6 weeks later, a letter arrived. Marcus's hands shook as he opened it, his face pale. Sarah stood beside him, her hand on his shoulder as he read. Dear Father, the letter began in a child's careful handwriting. Mother read me your letter. She said you were very brave in the war and that you got hurt, but you are getting better now. I am glad you are better. I am 7 years old. I like school. My favorite subject is mathematics. My stepfather says I am very good at numbers. Mother says I get that from you. I would like to write to you if that is all right. I have questions about the war and about the mountains. Mother says mountains are very big. I have never seen a mountain. We live in Boston. There are no mountains here. I'm glad you have a wife. Mother says Sarah must be very special. Will you tell me about her? Your son, Thomas Stone? Marcus couldn't finish reading it aloud. He handed the letter to Sarah and walked outside, his shoulders shaking. Sarah followed, finding him standing at the edge of the clearing, staring out at the mountains. He called me father, Marcus said, his voice breaking. He wants to write to me. He wants to know about me. Sarah wrapped her arms around him from behind, holding him tight. Of course he does. You're his father, and Marcus, this is your second chance. Your chance to be part of his life, even from a distance. Your chance to show him who you really are. Marcus turned and pulled her into his arms, burying his face in her hair. I love you, Sarah Stone. Thank you for this. Thank you for pushing me to try. Always, Sarah said. That's what family does. They received word after 8 months that Sarah's father had been arrested in San Francisco, caught trying to cash in the insurance policy. He was sentenced to 20 years in prison for attempted murder. Sarah cried when she got the news, but not from sadness. She cried from relief, from the knowledge that he could never hurt her again, that she was truly free. Marcus held her through it, let her cry, let her rage, let her finally grieve for the father she'd never really had and the childhood that had been stolen from her. He can't hurt you anymore, Marcus kept saying. He's gone. You're safe. You're free. I know, Sarah sobbed. I know, but it still hurts. It still hurts that my own father tried to kill me, that I wasn't worth loving to him, that I was never good enough. You were always good enough, Marcus said fiercely. He was the one who wasn't. He was the one who was broken and cruel and unworthy. Sarah, you are the most extraordinary person I've ever known. You're kind and brave and strong. You survived what he did to you, and you're still capable of love, still capable of hope. That's not weakness, that's strength. Sarah clung to him, letting his words sink in, letting herself finally believe them. She was free. She was loved. She was enough. As autumn painted the mountains in shades of red and gold, Sarah began to suspect something that filled her with equal parts joy and terror. She'd missed her monthly courses for 2 months now, and her body felt different, fuller, more sensitive. And in the mornings, she often felt queasy. She waited another week before telling Marcus, wanting to be sure. When she finally worked up the courage, they were sitting outside watching the sunset, wrapped in a thick blanket against the cooling air. Marcus, she said quietly, I need to tell you something. He looked at her, immediately alert to the nervous tone in her voice. What is it? Are you all right? I'm fine. Better than fine, actually. Sarah took a deep breath. I'm pregnant. Marcus went very still. For a moment, Sarah worried she'd made a mistake, that he wasn't ready, that the thought of being a father again terrified him. But then he turned to look at her, and the expression on his face took her breath away. You're sure? He asked, his voice barely a whisper. As sure as I can be. I've missed my courses twice now, and I have all the signs my mother told me about. Morning sickness, tender breasts, exhaustion. Marcus's hand moved to her stomach, covering it with his large palm. A baby, we're having a baby. Are you happy? Sarah asked anxiously. I know this is fast. We've only been married 8 months, and I know with Thomas and everything. Sarah, Marcus interrupted, his eyes shining with tears. I'm not just happy. I'm overwhelmed. I'm terrified. I'm grateful. He paused, searching for words. I'm being given another chance, a chance to be the father I should have been to Thomas, a chance to raise a child with the woman I love, a chance to do it right this time. You'll be a wonderful father, Sarah said, placing her hand over his, where it rested on her stomach. "I hope so. I'm going to try." Marcus pulled her close, pressing a kiss to her temple. "Thank you, Sarah. Thank you for giving me this gift. Thank you for believing I could be worthy of it." As winter approached and Sarah's belly began to swell, they prepared for the baby. Marcus built a cradle from smooth pine, carving delicate designs into the wood. Sarah sewed tiny clothes and blankets, her hands sure despite her nervousness. They talked for hours about names, about what kind of parents they wanted to be, about the life they would build for their child. Spring brought new life to the mountains, and with it, new life to their cabin. Sarah stood in the doorway one morning, watching Marcus chop wood, her hand resting on the swell of her stomach. He looked up, caught her watching, and smiled. That smile that still made her heart race, that reminded her every day how lucky she was to have been found on that frozen mountain. "You all right?" he called. "Perfect," Sarah called back. "Absolutely perfect." Marcus set down his axe and crossed to her, pulling her into his arms. His hand covered hers on her stomach where their child grew. "Can you believe it?" he whispered. "A year ago, we were both planning to die. And now we have everything," Sarah finished. She looked up at her husband, this man who had saved her in every way possible. "Thank you." "For what?" "For finding me, for saving me, for loving me, for giving me a life worth living." Marcus kissed her forehead. "You saved me too, you know. You gave me a reason to live again. A reason to hope, a reason to believe that maybe I could be more than my worst moments." The baby came on a warm day in late May, when the wildflowers were blooming across the meadow and the sky was impossibly blue. Sarah's labor started just after dawn, gentle waves of pain that gradually intensified. Marcus went pale when he realized what was happening. "I need to get Dr. Hastings," he said, already moving toward the door. "There's no time," Sarah gasped, gripping the edge of the table as another contraction hit. "The baby's coming too fast. You're going to have to help me." "Sarah, I don't know how." "Yes, you do." Sarah met his eyes, saw the fear there, and softened her voice. "Marcus, you've helped birth foals and calves. It's not that different, and I trust you. I trust you completely." Marcus took a deep breath, visibly steadying himself. All right. Tell me what to do." Over the next 6 hours, Marcus proved himself to be exactly the partner Sarah needed. He was calm when she was scared, strong when she was weak, gentle when she was hurting. He held her hand through the contractions, wiped the sweat from her forehead, whispered encouragement in her ear. "You're doing so well," he kept saying. "You're so strong, Sarah, so brave. I love you so much." When the final moment came, when Sarah felt the overwhelming urge to push, Marcus was there to catch their child, a girl, perfect and tiny, with a shock of dark hair and lungs that worked just fine if her first wail was any indication. "A daughter," Marcus said, his voice breaking as he carefully cleaned the baby and wrapped her in a soft blanket. "Sarah, we have a daughter." He placed the baby in Sarah's arms, and Sarah felt her heart expand in a way she didn't know was possible. This tiny person, this perfect little life, was theirs, created from love, born into safety, wanted beyond measure. "She's beautiful," Sarah whispered, tears streaming down her face. "Marcus, she's perfect." Marcus sat beside them on the bed, his arm around Sarah's shoulders, gazing down at their daughter with wonder. "What should we call her?" Sarah thought for a moment, looking at her daughter's tiny face. "Hope. I want to call her Hope, because that's what you gave me when you found me on that mountain. Hope for a future. Hope for a life worth living. Hope for a family." "Hope," Marcus repeated, testing the name. "Hope Stone. It's perfect." He kissed Sarah's temple, then gently brushed a finger across their daughter's cheek. "Welcome to the world, Hope. We've been waiting for you." Over the following months, Sarah and Marcus learned the joys and challenges of parenthood together. Hope was a good baby, quick to smile and relatively easy to soothe. Marcus was a devoted father, constantly holding his daughter, singing to her in his rough voice, carrying her around the cabin while Sarah rested. One afternoon, when Hope was 3 months old, Sarah found Marcus sitting in his rocking chair with the baby asleep on his chest, tears streaming down his face. "Marcus, what's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong," he said quietly. "Everything's right. That's why I'm crying. Because I'm happy. Because I never thought I'd get this. A second chance at being a father. A daughter who will grow up knowing I love her. A wife who believes in me. I never thought I deserved this much happiness." Sarah sat on the arm of the chair, wrapping her arms around both Marcus and Hope. "You deserve all of this and more. You're a good man, Marcus Stone. You're a good husband and a good father and a good person, and every day you prove that second chances are real." 2 months later, they received a letter that made Marcus cry again, but this time with pure joy. Elizabeth had written to say that she and her husband had discussed it, and they wanted to bring Thomas to visit, to meet his father, to meet Sarah, to meet his new sister. "They want to come here?" Marcus asked, staring at the letter in disbelief. "They want Thomas to know me?" "Of course they do," Sarah said, reading over his shoulder. "You're his father. And you've been writing to him for over a year now. He knows you, Marcus. He loves you. And Elizabeth says in the letter that he talks about you all the time, asks when he can visit the mountains." The visit was set for late summer. As the date approached, Marcus became increasingly nervous, cleaning the cabin obsessively, chopping enough wood to last 2 winters, hunting to stock the larder. "What if he doesn't like me?" he worried the night before they were due to arrive. "What if he sees me and he's disappointed?" "Marcus," Sarah said, taking his face in her hands, "that boy has been writing to you for over a year. He knows who you are. He knows about your past, about the war, about the struggles you've faced, and he still wants to meet you. That's not a child who's going to be disappointed. That's a child who's ready to love his father." The next day, Marcus stood at the edge of the clearing, watching the trail anxiously. When he finally spotted the small party making their way up the mountain, a well-dressed couple and a young boy on horseback, his hands were shaking. The boy looked just like his photograph, but seeing him in person, alive and real and growing, took Marcus's breath away. Thomas had Marcus's dark hair, his grey eyes, his serious expression, but when the boy spotted Marcus, his face lit up with a smile that was pure joy. "Father!" Thomas called, sliding off his horse and running toward Marcus. Marcus dropped to his knees, catching his son in his arms, holding him tight for the first time in 4 years. He was crying openly now, and he didn't care who saw. "Thomas," he managed to say, "my boy, my son." "I missed you," Thomas said, his voice muffled against Marcus's shoulder. "I missed you so much." "I missed you too. Every single day." They stayed like that for a long moment, father and son reunited, while Elizabeth and her husband looked on with understanding smiles. Finally, Marcus pulled back, still on his knees, so he could look Thomas in the eye. "I'm sorry I wasn't there for you. I'm sorry I left." "Mother explained," Thomas said seriously. "She said you were sick and needed to get better. Are you better now?" "I am, much better. And a lot of that is because of Sarah." Marcus stood, keeping one hand on Thomas's shoulder, and gestured for Sarah to join them. "Thomas, this is my wife, Sarah, and this," he took Hope from Sarah's arms, "is your sister, Hope." Thomas's eyes went wide. "I have a sister?" "You do, and she's going to need a big brother to look out for her." Thomas gently touched Hope's tiny hand, and the baby wrapped her fingers around his. "She's so small. I'll protect her. I promise." Marcus felt his heart might burst from the love and pride swelling in his chest. The visit lasted a week, and it was one of the happiest weeks of Marcus's life. He taught Thomas to fish and track, showed him the mountains he loved, told him stories around the campfire. Sarah and Elizabeth became fast friends, the 2 women talking for hours while the children played. On the last night, after Thomas had gone to bed, Elizabeth approached Marcus while he sat outside the cabin. "Thank you for inviting us," she said, sitting beside him. "This has been good for Thomas, good for all of us. Thank you for bringing him, for letting him know me." Elizabeth was quiet for a moment. "I was angry at you for a long time, Marcus. Angry at what you became, angry that you left. But seeing you now, seeing how you've healed, seeing how happy you are with Sarah and Hope, I realize that you made the right choice. Coming here, taking time to get better, that was the bravest thing you could have done. I had help. Sarah saved me. She did. And you saved her too, from what she's told me. You're good together." Elizabeth smiled. "I'm glad you found each other. I'm glad you found your way back. Can Thomas visit again? As often as you'd like. He's already asking when he can come back, and who knows, maybe when he's older, if he wants, he could spend summers here with you. Learn the mountains the way you did from your grandfather." Marcus felt tears prickling his eyes again. I'd like that very much." When Thomas left the next morning, he hugged Marcus tight and whispered, "I love you, Father. I'll write every week." "I love you too, son, more than you'll ever know." The years that followed were full and rich. Hope grew into a spirited little girl who loved the mountains as much as her father did. Thomas visited every summer, learning to hunt and trap, growing from a quiet boy into a confident young man. Sarah continued her healing work, her reputation spreading until people came from as far as 2 days' ride to seek her help. Marcus never stopped having nightmares entirely, but they grew fewer and farther between. And when they came, Sarah was always there, holding him, reminding him that he was home, that he was loved, that he was more than his past. They had 2 more children over the years, both boys who looked like miniature versions of their father. The cabin had to be expanded twice to accommodate their growing family, and Marcus built a small clinic beside it where Sarah could treat her patients. On their 10th anniversary, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset while their children played in the meadow, Marcus pulled Sarah close. "I've been thinking about that night I found you," he said quietly, "about how close we both came to dying, about how one chance encounter changed everything." "I think about it too," Sarah admitted. "Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if you hadn't found me, if you'd chosen a different path for your trap line that day. But I didn't. And you know why? Because Thunder wouldn't let me. He kept pulling toward that pass, kept insisting we go that way. It's like he knew, like something bigger than us knew we needed to find each other." Sarah leaned her head on his shoulder. "Do you believe that we were meant to find each other?" "I do. I believe that God, or fate, or whatever you want to call it, put you in my path for a reason. You needed saving, but Sarah, I needed saving too. I needed someone to show me that life was still worth living, that I could still be a good man, that I deserved love and family and happiness. You gave me all of that, and you gave me the same. You showed me what real love looks like. You proved that not all men are like my father. You gave me safety and family and a home. You gave me hope," she said, gesturing to their daughter. In every sense of the word, they sat in comfortable silence, watching their children play. Hope was teaching her younger brothers how to carve, just as Marcus had taught her. In the distance, they could see the mountains rising against the sunset. The same mountains that had nearly been Sarah's grave, but had instead become her home. "Thank you," Sarah whispered. "For what?" "For not believing my father when he left me there to die. For seeing worth in me when everyone else said I had none. For loving me when I didn't know how to love myself." Marcus turned to face her, cupping her face in his calloused hands. "Your father was wrong about you, so wrong. Sarah, you're the strongest, bravest, most beautiful person I've ever known. And every day, I thank God that I found you on that mountain. Every single day." They stood there in the doorway of their cabin, wrapped in each other's arms, looking out at the mountains that had once seemed so cold and unforgiving, but now felt like home. Sarah thought about that night on the mountain, dying in the snow, abandoned by her father. She thought about Marcus finding her, carrying her to safety, offering her not just his cabin, but his heart. She thought about how one moment of grace, one act of kindness, had changed both their lives forever. Years later, when Sarah told their children the story of how she and Marcus met, she would always end it the same way. "Your father found me when I was lost," she would say, smiling at Marcus across the table. "And I found him when he was lost too. We saved each other. That's what real love does. It finds you in the darkness and brings you home." Marcus would reach across the table, taking her hand, his grey eyes warm with love. "Best day of my life," he would say. "The day I found your mother on that mountain. Best day of my life." And Sarah, surrounded by the family she'd built with this gentle, strong, broken, beautiful man, would know with absolute certainty that she'd been right all along. Sometimes being abandoned was the first step to being found. Sometimes the end of one story was just the beginning of another. And sometimes, just sometimes, love saved you in the most unexpected ways. Marcus Stone had said it that very first night, his voice firm with conviction. No real father would ever do that. He'd been right. Her biological father had been no father at all, but Marcus had become everything a father should be, to Hope, to Thomas, to their sons. And he'd shown Sarah what it meant to be truly cherished, truly valued, truly loved. The mountains had tested them both, had nearly broken them both, But in the end, the mountains had also brought them together, had given them a home, had witnessed the birth of their love and the growth of their family. And every time Sarah looked at those peaks rising against the sky, she didn't see the place where she'd almost died. She saw the place where she'd truly begun to live, where love had found her in the frozen darkness and carried her home.